Okay, Marina, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Jordan. And hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. My name is Marina Eckler. She, her, hers. I am an old friend of Laura's who connected me with you all. And yeah, just um, happy to be here. I'm an artist, I'm a parent, and um, I guess I value language quite a lot. Uh, I'm not a writer, but it sort of factors into my art in an important way. Um, and I think that's about my elevator pitch on my life.
All right. Jasmine, why don't you take it away next?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jasmine Holmes. I'm a friend of Christina's. She, her, hers. I am a visual fine artist. I specialize in drawing and mixed media. Currently teaching at Colorado State University, teaching figure drawing. A little bit about my art. It focuses on the Black body and consumption within society. Um, and yeah, I guess that's my small pitch about myself.
That's really cool. Okay, Laura.
I'm Laura Benamots. I am a painter and installation artist. I see art as a vehicle for social change and dialogue. I'm a interest. I am a single mother, so that's part of my world. But a professor of art at Pikes Peak Community College, and I'm not sure what else to say. I am very involved in creating art that inspires dialogue and collaboration.
Very well put. I liked that last sentence a lot.
Mhm.
Um, okay, forgive me if this is wrong. Lupita? Is that how you say it? Okay, you are next.
Name is Lupita Carrasco, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a mother of seven and a caregiver to a mentally ill parent. I'm a painter. Um, I have been painting for about 15 years. Um, I paint basically anything that I feel I need to work out, anything that I need to process, and a lot of it has to do with my own upbringing and family life as a mother and a woman, and so I think that's it. I don't know.
I love that. My mom, so I'm the oldest of nine. So I also felt that we have five adopted kids in my family. So it's a very large family. So power to you. Like I've watched my mom raise kids and a lot of them and it's no easy task whatsoever. Any parenting is not. Um so I'm gonna state the next question and then Lupita, actually if you could start us because I feel like you started answering this question in your little elevator pitch. Is what's your biggest dream? Are there any roadblocks in the way based on your identity that has made this dream more difficult? Um, and even I would include like what maybe tag on like is your dream your passion at the same time? Like would you rate both of them together? So take it away.
Okay. Let's see. I think my biggest dream is to raise good people. Um, I think that's the most important thing. Um, I think that when I think about my art and what I want to do with my life, so much of it has been derailed by just life experiences. But I don't believe that my work would be what it is without all of those experiences. Um, I didn't get to go to school and have any kind of art education. Everything has been scary and like figuring everything out by watching what other people do. So learning through observing the people around me, other artists, there are people that are professional. Um, I think that let's see, when it comes to those big dreams and what I want my life to look like at the end of my life. I hope that I can remain true to what I believe in. And I think the most important thing for me is just expression of those deep, deep feelings that I can't put into words, that are difficult to say. Um, just being able to share with the world around other people a very different type of life. I think that a lot of people, they hear me say 7 kids. Oh my God, you take care of, a mentally ill parent. I couldn't do that. I think that I've been kind of forced into a position where I had to, figure these things out because I felt responsible. I felt a loyalty. Um, and so for me, those are my most important things that I can continue to create work until I die, hopefully, and that my kids grow up to be good humans. So
I love that. And like to clarify a little bit, would you say because I feel I personally, and this is maybe a question for you too to answer a little bit. Sorry, my cat's climbing on me. Would you say that your dreams now are the same as like, and when I say passion, I mean something that you do just for the love of it versus not, and when I say this, I exclude children because they are little loves of like life and their embodiments and they're separate people. But when I say passion, I mean like something that is not a human entity, like a hobby. Would you separate the 2? And do you have something that you kind of focus on other than art? Does that I don't know if I made
not
any sense in that, but
art, I think not
Art
other
and
than art. Definitely children, that's more of like it's very different. It's an obligation. It's something for some people that is their passion. For me, it was passion. I wasn't planning on having any kids, and I grew up an only child. So when I make room for creating, when I make room to paint, to sculpt, to do what it is that I love to do because I feel like I need to do it. A lot of the times, because of how I grew up, there's a guilt, a shame, like a selfishness that feels like is happening when I am working and setting aside time to create because it's not something that I was raised understanding that I need to feed my soul. I need time for me. I grew up just knowing obligation. And so painting and sculpting and any form of creation for me is that passion, and I fight for it. Even if it's only 15 minutes or an hour here and there when things are there's a lull when I send kids off to do chores. If I can that moment, I will take it, and even if I feel guilty about it, I'll still do it. So.
I love I appreciate a few of you've said that your parents I praise you for being able to do what you do, no matter how big or small, with being a parent. Because being a parent is already a full-time job, let alone working another job, working to work on yourself, your art, or to even like do self-care. Like I remember my mom had a hard time like figuring out if she needed to like take a shower or if she needed to like clean a bedroom. Like it was
it's
like
so true.
there's both. And anybody who and my mom, she's a very smart woman. I praise I'm gonna praise her for a minute. She has her PhD in reading and education. Very smart woman. Very, very smart woman. And she worked with me with dyslexic, like um I guess therapy. because I have some dyslexia. Um, and she did all of that well, like raising me, working on her dissertation, all that stuff. So moms, single mothers, married mothers, any kind of mother, I'm like, you guys are amazing. Um, let's jump to Marina real quick, and I'm gonna kind of ask the same question. What's your biggest dream, and are there any roadblocks based on your identity that has made this dream more difficult? And even I'll kind of encourage all of you, if there's any roadblocks at all, like anything that you can think of, just I'm sure other people are kind of going through the same thing. So just vocalize them. All right, Marina.
Oh, well, I was thinking about your questions over the last couple days. I sent them all to you in writing. That was just a funny misstep on my part or misreading. But anyhow, I've sort of processed that question, and I feel pretty certain that my knee jerk answer is just that my biggest dream is to roll art making into daily life. That's always been very important to me. That every single waking moment of life is art, and art is rolled into my art practice, so that it's not two locations for those modes of living. That it's all happening. I consider like the breakfast that I make my son every morning, I consider that part of my art practice. And it's not that I put it on my CV. I don't, and there are people who do and would. Um, and I honor that. That's, that it's not a bullet point. It's just that I consider all of life part of my practice. And that's been a huge goal for me. And I think it's partly because I got into art. The What inspired me most was like posters and zines and just free art that would just sort of come my way, um, living in San Francisco, and just sort of like coming across band posters and things that people would just you would just trip over art. And so to me it was the art that just ended up in your face on the subway that was um, very communicative, and that's what I wanted in on. And so that's how I feel um, about the art world. And I feel like I had the opportunity to see. Anybody know the performance artist Guillermo Gomez Pena? You
I
guys know him? Guy's awesome. He's been at it for a long time. But I saw a performance of his a couple weeks ago online, and he was talking about how like there's many art worlds, that he finds it annoying and insulting when people talk about the art world. He's like, well, what art world are we talking about here? So
Mhm.
I really honored that, and it was such a like beautiful screed what he had to say. um I really like that guy. But how'd I get on that? Just yeah, all of the many art worlds. um I'm into that. And then I guess I would say a roadblock is that I'm not rich. So that means that like, oops, I have to work for a living. But also I've had a lot of good experiences. I teach art up at the university here, and I love it. My I didn't really ever want to teach, but I love that I do teach, and I've learned so much from my students, and it's so cool. Um, Such a great gig. And then I would also say that I have ADD, which I am in the process of rewriting. I now call it a discursive demeanor, and that is what I have. I have a discursive demeanor, folks. And but I mean, in all seriousness, I've just started medicating it, and I have like all my life come up with workarounds to so that I can get through the day, because it's not like an affliction that you can't live through, but you have to work twice as hard to do all the regular things. So that's
So,
been eye-opening for me.
Marina, I know, okay, I know one thing. We consume art. Everything that we do, we consume art. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter if you're going through Facebook, it doesn't matter if you're walking, like, down the street, like you said, a poster on the subway, whatever it is, on the bus. And that is subconscious storytelling to us that art in whatever way is something that is hammered into us basically as a kid. So you said that you incorporate art into your everyday experience, and you said making your son's breakfast was everyday experience. What I guess tips would you give to incorporate art into everyday experiences? How do you like ground yourself and go, "Oh, this is art right now," even though it's an everyday task?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the I like the idea of I mean, here we are in the pandemic, so things are weird, and I have just noticed that the moment to moment, the present moment is where it's at. Because every plan, there's no such thing as a concrete plan in COVID. And so to me, it's all about the moment. And that has been just a good reminder. I don't know. I'm like trying to keep my ears open all the time. Trying to trying to be a good listener, knowing when to sit back and know that you know, it may or may not be time for me to make these paintings that I have. They're knocking around in my head, but I want to know like when's the right time to do them. I'm not sure. So I sort of feel like it's okay to sit and be quiet and just sort of let let things wash over you for a minute. And so it's all right if it's a moment of rest. That's also art because that's something I talk to my students about just in the rudimentary like 2D design class. It's like, listen, if you bombard your viewer with too many interesting, awesome things, you run the risk of mental exhaustion. And like you say, Jordan, that like um, everything you encounter art in all these unexpected places, and that's like a visual rhetoric, and it can come at you left and right, and you can exhaust people with too much. You need a moment of visual rest, and I think right now it's been like unexpected rest. And so that's, I guess, that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I don't know, I'm picky about every dang thing. That's all I can say is I have high standards for things, like, and everything, like things to, I don't know, just certain smells, certain tastes. I like to certain foods.
So you're very intentional about what you put in your space
I try.
and
Yeah.
just be kind of aware of everything. I feel like everybody can implement that, artist or not, is implementing stuff that you like artist. I think everybody's an artist, but artist or not, I think you can implement everything into your everyday life that you like and enjoy, and you're like, this is making this moment special. This is
Yeah.
what it
And
is.
also to not over curate yourself too, because I think that can get really precious too, to be like, I can't possibly have, like, you want to be able to let yourself be surprised by things. And then, like, when you have kids in your space, like, they're going to surprise you. So you can have, you can have all your, you know, you can have all these guidelines, but they're going to have their own influences over you, which is pretty
Yeah.
great.
I mean, they're their own people. They are individuals that have their own tastes and everything, even as little baby munchkins, as little
Totally.
small children. They
You know, oh, sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I didn't know if it was right to interject or not. But as I'm listening, I mean, I think it's all about a not functioning as a human arrow. We live in a very goal oriented society. And so there's the idea of the objective. And the best way to get there is you don't look around you. And I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, just in that I think the artistic experience, the soul, uh, is an artistic realm. But being an artist is a profession.
Mhm.
Not everybody is an artist. I know maybe that's not very PC to say, So I wouldn't say it quite the way you said it, but I appreciate the sentiment of it. And I think what is unique about traveling, traversing this path, this journey, is that the artist is paying attention. They see the crack on the sidewalk, and that is a part of the journey, equal to the ultimate destination goal. And if you're not looking around you, not paying attention, not letting the experiences that are swirling around you all the time enter your realm, you're really limiting what you have to offer as an artist, but also what you're feeding off. So I just wanted to piggyback on what Marina was saying and your question about, how do you incorporate art, or how is it that art is part of your life? It's just letting yourself notice and be impacted by the things that are happening around you and not being afraid of that.
Yeah, I love that summary of combining, like, just letting life kind of be, 'cause, correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of explaining that life is its own art. I don't know if that's the
I
right
like
way to
that
say
though. You've taken it someplace new. I'll go with you. Like it.
So I'm gonna piggyback. I'm gonna revert a little bit, and we're gonna head to Jasmine right after you answer this question. What is your biggest dream, and what is some of the obstacles and roadblocks you've faced? And then we're gonna head over to Jasmine and have her answer the same question. But I'm sure we'll kind of tangent along.
Yeah, I jumped. I'm sorry, I jumped
No,
in.
you're okay. This is a conversation. I was just making sure that we're not trying to answer it. She said
Right,
it's a
right.
conversation, so we can ask and talk and
You. You
have
know,
conversation.
I was looking at this question. It's so funny. Marina, I also wrote down all my answers and pondered the questions, and I almost sent them in. And then I was like, no, I don't need to. But this question, or the way you've combined a couple of the questions, is really interesting to me because there's dream as far as, and it's so funny, I don't separate career from self, and I also don't think about hobbies. um these are all parts of me. I do dream that each set of paintings I or works I create is better than the last. I dream that I will continue to have opportunity to share my work and have other people um, respond to it, be inspired by it, negatively or positively. I don't know. And, I do think uh, this kind of crosses over to the obstacle slash dream. It's a little bit intertwined. Um, Three of us women are parents. One, I assume, is not. Maybe you are. I think that being a parent is a very hard job. I think not being a parent is also a very hard job, and living your life in a very focused way is really admirable. It's funny to me. My children. One of my dreams is that I have produced good men, that they are kind, insightful human beings. That's definitely a dream of mine. I often wonder why it didn't occur to me to not have children. Not that I have any regrets, but it never occurred to me because my maternal instinct was strong, and who knows if I bought into expectations without even realizing I was buying into them. I have found there beyond the fact that there's no money, which totally we all smiled and went like yes. And art is a very expensive field to be in. Um, I think that one of the obstacles I've run into is I'm an older single woman of a minority faith. I have repeatedly at our institution been spoken to about having a New York personality. I didn't grow up in New York, so that means ugly, Jewish, rude personality. And it's a very painful code to live with. And we all have those those codes where people think they're being diplomatic, but really they're being so deeply offensive. And so for me, perhaps the skill that emerged from that is I try to be very aware. Um, Obviously, I am a very verbal person, but hopefully not a rude person. And a, so the obstacle is that incredible self consciousness about feeding somebody else's ugly stereotype of who you are. And the gift from that is an awareness of self, um, and an ability to say, ooh, did I cross a line there? How am I feeling about my mode of communication? So, dreams, obstacles, whatever, that's the whole thing.
So can I ask you a little bit of a follow-up question? Then we're gonna head right to Jasmine. I promise we're getting
Yeah.
there. I'm just
Yasmin's work is amazing. I mean, everybody on this panel, these are four extraordinary artists you have in front of you whose achievements in the world of art, in terms of what they're producing, their career path, their career obstacles is extraordinary. Just, I'm sure you know that, but I just wanted to say that too.
so kind of tagging off of how you said like, oh, people assume that you have a New York personality and you're first of all, well, I grew up in upstate New York, but I still visited the city and stuff. So I'm technically from New York. There are a lot of people who I feel like New York, I mean, not I'm not defending it in any means. I feel like New York just kind of says it how it is and they don't have time for the in between. Now, this is maybe a little bit of a controversial question, and this is an art panel, but this is also a women's art panel. At what point do you think people are just not used to a woman being outspoken about stuff? Like, at what point is that you aren't being heard properly because you were expected to meet this status quo, and instead you're not what everybody thinks you should be, which should be this nice, delicate, whatever, and that does not mean you can't be delicate and, you can be all sorts of stuff. But how do you feel like that plays out in work, in art, in your life, in all of that?
I think that is a really wonderful follow-up question that I bet everybody on the panel has something to say about. I definitely think, and by the way, a lot of these assumptions or assertions or challenges have come from women too. So I think that we ourselves as women, um, we have a love-hate relationship with the strength within ourselves and others. But it is, in the end, a male-driven society. And so there are so many assumptions that are made and expectations and assumptions of agenda. In other words, a woman who is bright, articulate, verbal, all of a sudden is seen as a woman with agenda versus a man who's bright, articulate, with ideas is seen as exciting. So definitely there is something there you're touching on.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, Christina, you can cut this out if you want, like, but I feel like it should be talked about. It should be talked about that sometimes I know that I sometimes have seen too excited, too loud, too, something. And it's just because I'm just as loud as everybody else. I'm just
Mhm.
as articulate. I just have as many passions as everybody else, but I'm unwilling to keep a cap on it. And I think that's what a lot of women struggle with, and I think a lot of people try to buy into society normals where you try to stay to the status quo, where it's okay to be exactly how you are because this is what's expected of you, instead of trying to break the mold, instead of trying to kind of come out of your shell a little bit and challenge people into what they think of what your role is supposed to be and how you're supposed to act. So all of that being said, Jasmine, you can either open up with this question of how you think women are affected by society norms, and if you've ever been calling outspoken, if you've ever been like shut down a little bit because you're a little bit more artistic, creative, you know, passionate, whatever it is that you've been labeled with that is supposed to be positive but negative. Um, and also, I would like you to answer what your biggest dream is, and is there any roadblocks? So you have a lot. Just go for it.
What's funny is that both of these questions are the same for me, um, especially in my life within the education system. So when I first saw this question, I immediately went to like kind of the capitalist notion of like my dream is my job and things like that, but that's not correct. My ultimate dream is that my art means something, that it
Mm,
becomes impactful to especially marginalized groups that don't
mm,
really feel like they have a voice. Because originally, when I started making art, I grew up drawing. Like I always drew my whole life. But what I don't talk about a lot is that I grew up in the deep south. So as a black woman growing up in the deep south, I was often told to be quiet or to not really do things that drew attention to me. But at the same time, I was also taught within a military family. So I was always taught this notion of having to be three times better than everybody else around me just to get the same respect. So both of those together kind of caused me to be really introverted, to learn to not have a voice. And I was often talked over. I was often put into a box, especially when I started getting into the art world, and
mm,
art education. So I started to use my art as my voice. And the more I did that, the more I started to amass more people that saw the same thing I was seeing in my own art. And that's what I want to do. I want my art to be that voice for people. Um, because so often, especially in the education system or the fine arts world, um, people of color are put into boxes. Women of color, especially, are put into boxes where they are not allowed to express themselves. But art shouldn't have boxes. Like there's no box that art fits into. But we have made these areas where these people are not allowed to maneuver out of. They can't stray out of them, and that culminated in my master's program where I was still being put into a box in my master's program. It was just supposed to be about me making my own art. I kept getting told that I was supposed to do a certain type of art and that it didn't make any sense that I was doing something else. And like my ultimate dream is to one be a professor, which I also like Marina didn't want to teach at first, but as I started teaching, I started realizing the impact that you can have on other people and how you can help them come out of their own box or help them realize that there are no boxes, there are no um, cages that you should put yourself in, and you should constantly be fighting against that status quo that women and women of color especially are put into constantly. And I also want to use my art as that vehicle. So I'd say that those two questions mesh with me because it's still something that I'm constantly fighting. And having moved out here, I still feel like I'm not. It's not very diverse in certain areas of Colorado. So I do still feel like a little misunderstood in a lot of systems that I go through. But I've become more confident in using my voice and actually just challenging people. And I truly feel like that's something women should start doing. Like, should start teaching themselves that we have voices too. And it
mm.
will probably get negative views. A lot of people don't like it when we speak out, but that's how things change. We have to speak out and speak for each other. Um, so
So a
hopefully,
follow up
that
kind
answered
of question to all of that. What kind of I asked Marina a tips question. This is also a tips question. What would you say to artists, women people of whatever, they're doing, however they're expressing themselves, how would you say that they could find their voice? Like, what are some things that you did that kind of helped you figure out how to use your expressive self? Like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be art. I know we're talking about art, but it could be anything.
It's it's kind of weird to say it out loud, but there was a breaking point a couple years ago, about 5 years ago, where I just realized I should stop caring what other people think. That's
Mm.
basically what I did. I just kind of like gave up. I don't know why I spent my whole 25 years of my life caring what other people thought of what I was doing. And I realized it is my life. Like, no matter what, it's my life, and I want to live it the way I want to live it. So that's my advice, I guess, to other people, is just to do what you want to do, really. That sounds so much easier than it actually is. It takes a lot of work to get to that point where you feel comfortable in doing what you want to do, but constantly reminding yourself that this is your life. It's
Mm.
yours. You're only going to live it once, and you need to take hold of that. You need to do what you want to do, um, and you'll probably feel more fulfilled by doing that instead of listening to what society tells you you're supposed to be doing. And that's basically what I did.
Yep. I really like that. I know I used to be super introverted for almost the same reasons. I would not talk, and now you can't get me to shut up. Um, but I would not talk, and a lot of that was to do with the fact that I had so much to say, and it was shut down a lot. So I think, like, I don't know, should we go to a lighter heart question? Or should we keep going with this kind of vein? Because there's
I
a lot.
like this kind of vein in a way. But I wanted to say, Jasmine, I really respect that so much what you shared. And the idea um, that for a woman, and especially it's harder for young women, I think, to to hear the mantra, I am worth it. It doesn't mean whomever you love, woman, man, whatever. For a lot of women, love itself, the romantic impulse, is a distraction from that mantra. I am worth it. Separate from my partnership, separate from all the distractions that will pull me away. So I love what you said. Thank you.
I have another follow-up for anybody who wants to answer, really. And it's kind of a twofold, and you can kind of interpret it however you want. And this one's not on here. A lot of these are just me genuinely wondering what you guys think about certain things that have been on my mind. How okay, so how do you feel like your art expresses yourself, and how do you feel like that's changed with learning yourself? Does that make sense to everybody?
It's a good question. Lupita should start us off.
I do have something to say about this. I remember when I first started showing work here, and I remember the first gallery I walked into to find out if I could hang some work in this gallery in Old Colorado City, and the owner looked at my pieces and looked at me and said, "Where are you from?" And I just thought, well, I'm from California, and I found it so odd the way that they looked at me, and they said, well, this kind of work is not what sells. And for so long, I fought against that, having so many people telling me, this what you're doing, you should find a niche, you should find something that is popular, you should find something that, you're really good at this is what you should be doing, stick to one thing, stop dabbling in so many different places. And I couldn't listen. I couldn't listen because that didn't involve exploring what I wanted to explore, right? I had to listen to that inner like that inner drive that my curiosity led me to all these different places. And you know, I look back at that work that they were so shocked by, and they were just landscapes. They were textured landscapes. Um it wasn't something that was out of the ordinary or anything, but it looked different. And there was maybe too much vibrancy. And for a time, I remember I tried very hard to dull down my colors, dull down like my use of color. And I would look at other artists and be like, how do they get those more like subdued tones? I don't understand it, and I would really worry about like things looking cartoonish or things looking childish, and I spent a lot of years like really scared that like I want to be exploring these things, but I can't make my art look a certain like give it a certain degree of like authenticity, something that might be like real art. And after a time, I think I finally reached a point where I also reached that I don't care anymore. You know, the most important thing about art is that it is our individual voice, and my individual voice is loud, is colorful, is can't be subdued. Even though I may seem to be a subdued person sometimes, there's a lot that needs to come out. And I'm glad that I didn't listen to the people that kept telling me find something that is going to sell, find something that's popular, because I I'm am really good at a lot of things. I could produce almost anything, that would be required or asked of me. But if it doesn't speak to who I am and my experience, I don't see it as really worth my time. And I'm glad that I've been able to stick to that, because it my voice, my artistic voice remains authentic because of that. So
I love that. That was everything that I wanted as an answer to that question. Absolutely everything. Um, does anybody else wanna answer that question? I feel like there's lots of different not even takes or opinions, but expressions of that question.
Like the piggyback
Yeah.
off of what Lupita said, because I dealt with the same thing. Being in galleries, a lot of patrons would look at my work and immediately think a man did it because it wasn't pretty to look at, or because my work deals with a lot of heavy things. It's not exactly enjoyable to look at, if that makes sense. It's very hard to look at and very hard to view. So naturally, people would think that a man did it, or much less a woman of color, a black woman did. And that's something that I've constantly dealt with my work. And I was always being told, well, maybe you should do something like flowers, or maybe you should do something more feminine, or do something more essentialist, just something that read woman to a lot of people, or something that was easy to sell. And I struggled with that throughout my whole undergrad for the most part, trying to get into shows and not being seen at those shows. I didn't feel seen at all. Um,
Mm,
but I started to realize that I was making art and I didn't know how to talk about it. I was just making. That's just what I did for the longest time because I grew up drawing, and I didn't know why I needed to draw. Um, but then after a while, I started to realize that all of the figures were this one kind of amalgamation. Like there's a bunch of figures across a page that become one object, and I
mm,
started to read into that. And then I started to be able to talk about it and say to people, well, this means that there's no individuality. Like it's a loss of identity, because that's what I've always felt my whole life. And I truly feel like my art is a part of me, it's a part of my soul, and it's my own voice. And I think if you continue doing what you want to do, or what just comes to you naturally as an artist, you're giving a piece of yourself to that canvas or to that surface that you're drawing on or painting on or sculpting. So you don't need to change it. If other people don't resonate with it, that's art. That's just what art is. It's not supposed to resonate easily. And just be hanging on someone's wall. It's meant to be a part of the artist and to change the world. So
I love
hopefully
that.
that was a good answer.
All of them, it's just I love it. Marina, do you have anything to add to this? I know everybody else kind of like is picking up, but if you have anything to say about this subject whatsoever, like,
Uh, I think if I understand that question correct, like, is did the sort of knowledge of self change the art, or
mhm,
vice versa? I
mhm.
would say, kind of. I I want my art, and I typically think of my art as a conversation, and it's not necessarily an inward um, exploration. Not always. I'm not saying that there isn't a perspective, because you can't really shake who you are, right? You are who you are. And at the same time, it's like I feel like I'm having a conversation with um, just our whole culture, and I definitely feel like it's it isn't the same thing, because I'm not having the same conversation my whole life, and nobody is. And so sometimes I'm doing one thing and sometimes I'm doing another. And I don't know, I definitely feel more critical of I feel super picky about art spaces. There aren't a lot of art spaces that I would want my art to be part of. And so if I'm ever in that situation, like, I don't know that I want my art here. Like, I don't say yes to everything. I don't hustle very good. I'm definitely not um I'm not a baller in that way, but it is my New Year's resolution to be a baller. And so it's that's like
Is
that's
that
a
a male
different
expression?
a male expression.
Baller. What's a baller?
I think of a baller as like a basketballer, like somebody who's in the game, and
Okay.
you're just there. You're doing your thing. I do, but I think it could be about balls too. I think it's also a male thing, and like
Oh, I just want to understand.
I think it's a both and, for sure. It's funny though, Laura, when you were talking about like the sort of coded language that, like, oh,
Mhm.
you're calling me a New Yorker, you're calling me Jewish, or you're like you're
Agree with you.
or
Yeah.
you're calling out my being a female, being outspoken as being code for being Jewish, and sometimes, but it made me think of like Joan Rivers. If you've ever seen the documentary about her, and she was like, I know I'm going to be dismissed. So like it was this documentary about her where she's like categorizing her jokes. She had them, you guys, on index cards, and like
Mm.
there's an enormous like vault of her jokes that she wrote down on paper, and documentation and all this stuff, where she knew she was going to be dismissed and undervalued. And so she like got out in front of it and was like, because you're going to undervalue me, I'm going to document my whole career. And so I
I,
don't have that. Like, I'm not an archivist of my career and my life in that way, but I do understand the impulse. And so I just kind of wanted to chime in on that, just to say, like, I hear that, I see it, I hear it. But no, I don't know. I don't see my art as being all that um, autobiographical necessarily. I don't know.
you know, oh, sorry.
No,
I was
I was gonna ask you, Laura, what your tag is on this.
Well, I really love hearing artists I respect talk about their process and their inspiration and their kind of what's the language they frame their own work in. And Marina's work is very much like setting before you open ended questions. Eh, that's what the work is and does. So it's not surprising to me that that you think of it that way. Of course, it's a part of you because these are the questions you're exploring at that moment. But you just kind of put that question out there, and And for each of us, there's that interesting a a moment where we're like teetering on giving an answer, or explaining fully what we mean, or keeping something open ended that's going to inspire others to engage and perhaps go someplace else with it. And the answer for most of us is somewhere in between all of those options, but the whether it's literally connected to our inner world or abstractly just by the fact that it's connected to us, it is us producing. This kind of brings it around to what Lupita was saying. If the work is authentic, then yes, it changes throughout one's career because we're authentically morphing, changing, growing. Um, and it also connects with others who see it, who sometimes are surprised they connect with it, you know.
So, Laura, I do have a little bit of a follow up question that tags onto this and before, but and not but also I have a finishing question to finish us off. So, my last question to you, Laura, specifically on this subject is when you say your art gets better or you hope it will get better, what is your definition of better and success
Mm.
in that realm? Like what do you define as better?
Okay, I love that question. First of all, I have no idea what success is because I would be carrying all over the place if the measure of success was how much of my work sold. So I don't know what success means. But when I say better, I guess I go back to the theme of the whole panel discussion: women who raise their voices even when their voice shakes. That the work becomes more courageous, a, a little more naked, a not literally, although perhaps, but that the work takes more chances, makes fewer assumptions, um, and pushes myself outside the realm of what I know is expected. This, for me, is a measure of my aspiration that each production of work, body of work, is better than the last. So you're right. It is a very subjective definition. It is my definition for my journey.
That again, you guys are answering these questions as like better than I could have imagined that going. So my last, I guess, kind of closing out question, because I feel like it'd be good to leave people who come and watch this again with other people to look up autobiographies of and people you respect is, and you guys could take them out. I'm going to start with Laura because we're
Oh
already
gosh.
okay. We can start with go think on your feet. What is one artist woman that you respect? And I'll call it like a designer spotlight, like a artist spotlight, like something like who would you, if you could pick one person for, you know, college age kids or a little bit older, whoever's watching this.
Okay, I'm really embarrassed because I forgot the name. And actually, when I was looking over the questions, I it said not your mother, and I was like, but my mother, she's like she grew up in poverty in Hell's Kitchen. She's the daughter of an immigrant who had a breakdown when she was 8. Um, she's one of the smartest people I know. She is an artist who got the full ride to Cooper Union, which at the time, if you got into Cooper Union, it was free, and it was one of the best American art schools. And she gave it up to follow her husband's career. My mother, Florence Kaufman. But if you look her up, you're gonna maybe you'll see a photo of me with my mommy. So that's not help. but there's the name of a very famous African American woman quiltist who was really important in the 60s and 70s in bridging the world of quilting, which was a form of women's self-expression, with the contemporary art sensibility of social commentary. And I'll just have to like a mumble here, so you can then put the name in at the end because I can't remember her name. So I'll get it to you.
Lupita, why don't you tell us who you would recommend people to look up and read biographies on and
Okay. I just have to be really super honest. I didn't have a lot of access to art and artists growing up as a kid. So my first encounter was with Dali, and then my next encounter was with Frida. But right now, like when I think about artists that I look up to, right now there's an artist on Instagram that I look up to a lot, and it's an older woman. I think she's in Australia, and her name is Debbie McKinnon. Um, and and her work isn't really, it's not figurative. It's not the type of work that I normally enjoy doing. But what I absolutely love about this artist is how persistent she is. And I feel that, like, in my life, that has been the constant, is my persistence, my tenacity, to continue to create even with all the obstacles. So for her, I see that she works daily. Sometimes I can work daily. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I go through months of time where I can't do anything other than school my children, make meals, and clean a house and take care of my mom. And in seeing people that persist, that continue to just knock it out of the park, in creating, it's an inspiration to me. And I am able to forgive myself for the moments that I can't be making art, but I know that it's always there waiting for me. And so I just, she produces very wild landscapes that are just using natural objects and sticks and things, and I don't know, I love the like the spontaneity of her work, and it reminds me also not to be so, concerned about things being perfect. Sometimes things just are what they are, a reflection of your life at the moment, and it's okay. So
I
that's
love
it.
it. And then the name of that quilter was Faith Ringgold? Is that how you
Right.
pronounce
Faith Ringgold.
it? Ringgold? Okay. Perfect. And Jasmine, who would you say would be
Uh,
somebody?
I'd have to say Sonia Clark. She's
Mm.
an amazing Black woman artist, contemporary artist. Her work deals with racial identity, but she uses thread work along with found objects. And the way that she combines the two, just like the best visual representation I can think of, especially as a Black woman coming from the South, like her. Um, she's just so driven, and she's constantly changing the way that she creates these visual representations, and they're just so amazing to look at. And I got the chance to meet her about 4 years ago, and she was just such a huge inspiration, and also just the sweetest woman ever. um, but her work's amazing and very inspirational.
Okay, and then last but definitely not least, Marina, who would you
Can I
say?
say two if I say it really fast?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Well, the first one is just based on the visuals, and her practice is so cool. Amy Sherald. She's a Black American painter. She painted, most famously, she painted Michelle Obama's portrait. Just a killer painter. Like, I look at her paintings and she gives me that feeling of like, oh, I wish I painted that. Kind of. I mean, her practice is just phenomenal. Just her craft, but her attention on just community and pride, but the clothing, the fabric, just she's got and her use of colors just amazing. And then she has this whole conceptual thing with she works in grayscale. Everybody's skin color is in grayscale. She typically paints black people, but not always, but no matter what, you're going to be in grayscale. Your skin will be grayscale because it's a thing about like you should just be like this light or this dark. And she sort of steps over the whole thing about pigmentation. So she's rad. And then in terms of the practice and the concepts, I love Merle Euclides, Laterman Euclides. It's I'd have to spell her name. It's hard to
Mhm.
pronounce, but you'd have to just look her up. But her whole thing is about work and labor. And her most famous thing was a thing with the sanitation workers in New York City, and it was like this whole it was like bringing the everyday into the museum and sort of as a provocation to the museum and to that art world. Like here, I'll do this thing. I'll dust your sculptures for work for art. So I'll write it in the chat, but it's spelled like that. Yeah, something like that.
Oh, I love that name. That
Yeah.
is I love original names. It's one of my favorite, like, things to just look at is small parts of people's heritage, like, coming all together, and then it makes cool last names and first names, and I just love it. Alright, I wanna honor your guys' time. We are 5 minutes over technically, but thank you for staying 5 minutes extra and finishing this conversation. I know I, like, gleaned a lot from it. I loved it. And thank you guys for inspiring next generation artists and current artists and being artists yourselves. And thank you for your time. So I don't know how else to end it, but just to say goodbye.
Thank you so